All right. Once again, here's our vision. I know that's something we will probably be revisiting as we start to think about the new year. We have our county offices over here. It was really nice over the last day and a half that Riverside and Mono counties were with us discussing university assisted community schools. So it was great having our core partners. Um, or at least our county office partners with us. Below, you also see our core partners. They're always supporting and helping us. We have Capacity to Impact, California School Health-Based Alliance, and LAEP, Los Angeles Education Partnership. Next slide. Here's our agenda for today. We do have a welcoming ritual coming up. We'll talk a little bit about the California Way. We have a revised version, and then you can see a lot of today is going to be about collaborative leadership structures. And so if you need, I'll wait a second here if you want to go ahead and use the QR code for the resource folder. All right, go ahead and take me to the next slide. Here is our revised California Way for Community School Transformation. And I like how they brought that in there. It wasn't there before about community school transformation, which has moved. And what we see here is it moved Y from the bottom up to the top, where you really start to focus. And that was a talk that we've had over the last day and a half of the importance of the overarching values, which are really guiding that why. And then you have the setting the stage for the how, which is your capacity building strategies. And I'm hoping most of you have seen the revised draft of that, which has gone down from 9 to 5. They're all still there. It's just been integrated a little bit in a different way. And then you have the why, which is your local programs and practices. So that is our revised California Way for community schools. Stephanie, go ahead and take us to the next slide. And so we do have a poll here. I'm going to read the question to you, and then you'll have a chance to answer the poll. I think Dr. Kemp's going to pull that up for us. I look over because she's about 10 feet away. Do you regularly assess team members and practices of your site-based or LEA-based shared decision-making team responsible for implementation of the CA Community Schools framework? So I know we're going to pull up a Zoom poll and we'll give you a chance to answer that. I feel like I'm watching a race between yes and no. All right, thank you. I'll give you another 20 seconds, make sure everyone's had a chance to answer. And at this point, I will hand it over to Dr. Kemp for a little bit.
You're muted.
Next slide, please. Sorry. So we're going to talk about the purpose of collaborative leadership structures. The reason for bringing this up as our last community of practice is because as we're going into the summer, we need to start preparing for next year. And one of the biggest things that we need to prepare for is who is going to be sitting at the table as we are discussing how to do community school implementation, whether it's for your district or your school site. Next slide, please. So alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. Helen Keller. The reason why we are bringing this quote up today is that community school transformation, the work that needs to be done, cannot be done in isolation. So, how you set up your collaborative leadership structure for your district and your school site is really, really essential to getting the work done because we need all voices heard for the betterment of our families and students. Next slide, please. So, the whole purpose of a collaborative leadership structure is making sure that we are sharing decision making, we're promoting inclusivity, and we're driving toward collective action as we're working towards the goals of the community hubs that we are trying to build within the district and at our school sites. And the whole premise around collaborative leadership structures is we need diverse stakeholders at the table, ones that truly represent what your district is about, what your school community is about, so we can make sure that we're putting all the things that are needed within that site. Collaborative leadership structures are indispensable for community schools. You will not get effective community school transformation without building collaborative leadership. Next slide, please. So the need for collaborative leadership structures in community schools is very simple. One, we need it for that decision making, right? So making sure that we're getting inputs from our teachers, our parents, our students, community members, partnerships, all those that are working towards transforming your school into a community school hub. You're also thinking about communication that needs to be enhanced. Everyone that's involved in that process should know what you are doing with your community school because each community school is going to look different based on the needs and assets of that site. It's going to look different from one to the other. So, communication transparency is very, very important. That shared responsibility, it is not just the administrator job. It's not just the teacher's job. It's everyone that is involved with that community school has ownership and accountability to make sure that we are all moving towards the right direction of building an effective community hub where we are removing barriers for our students and we are making sure that our students are able to access learning and have the success they need within the environment. Next slide, please. Trust and relationships. I know this has been something that's constantly been mentioned as we have been talking to districts. It's like we have the team, but we don't have the parent involved, or we have these involved, but we don't have our students at the table. Well, we need to build trust and relationships because technically everybody should be represented at the table, from the student to the family to the community member to the teacher to your classified staff, your support staff, your administrator, district member. Everyone should be included at this table. So that's the importance of building those relationships and having that trust. So therefore, we work together, we trust one another, and we're all working towards the same goal. And you also got to think of empowerment in leadership and development. If you were to leave your school today, would you be the one taking all the information? They wouldn't know where to go. So that's why we need to empower everyone, especially with leadership development, to be able to lead this work because the work shouldn't leave when a couple of people leave. It needs to be able to continue to thrive and flourish if you were to leave today. There should be team members there that know this is where we left off at and we keep pushing. So all of these are very important and needed for community school settings in regards to collaborative leadership structure. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the leadership structure, who are the stakeholders that should be at the table? And these are just examples. You're going to have your principal, your assistant principal, community school coordinator, your counselor, social worker, school psychologist, teacher, all of these individuals that are on here, and probably even more if you have different types in your learning environment, should be at the table and be included in your collaborative leadership structure. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the collaborative leadership structure and the needs for those that have the grant, your team is going to help you with all these reports. You need them to help with your needs and asset assessment. You need them to help with your annual progress report, annual sustainability report, your exponential report. Look at all the things that need to be done. You need a collaborative leadership team to do this. You cannot do this work by yourself. Can you imagine one person doing all this? You're going to be burnt out. You're going to be like, oh my God, community schools is not the way to go. There's going to be compliance pieces with whatever you do, but that's the point of your leadership team because if you guys are all working together, these should be easy peasy, ready to go. Everybody has a part, everyone's participating, and you're getting things done. So next slide. So through collaborative leadership structures, we harness collective expertise and support of educators, parents, and communities to empower students to succeed academically, socially, and emotionally. So as we are building these collaborative leadership structures, all egos, all pride, everything goes out the door because we are working for the betterment of our students and families. Our job is to make sure, as the leaders, as we're leading this work, we're building that collaborative leadership structure to make sure that we're bringing as many people as to the table so we can have those voices, those diverse stakeholders to make sure that we are making the best decisions in regards to what we need to do for our students. Next slide.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. And so when you look here and you start to think about mindsets, like I said, we've been here at UCLA for the last day and a half, and a lot of our conversations were about how do we shift our mindset. So as you dig into this collaborative leadership structures and mindsets, I'm going to give you a couple definitions here to think about. Is that the Learning Policy Institute defines collective leadership, and they share it as a culture of professional learning, collective trust, and shared responsibility using strategies such as site-based leadership teams and teacher learning communities. We're all in this together. And like Dr. Kemp said, it does take a village to do this work. And if not, like she said, it will burn you out. And there's been a lot of people who are higher up in this process and been through it for years, and they talk about the importance of not only shifting the mindsets, but doing this work in a co-creative manner. And I want to also add, when you also think about this idea of inclusive leadership, NEA shares that it ensures school staff, alongside students, families, and community members, maintain a focus on the assets and needs of the community in the decision-making process. And very often it's easy to get away from that idea of the assets, but it's understanding how do we use these things together and how do we build those partnerships and work in a co-creative manner that really supports our students with their needs and what they need in their communities. Next slide. So I'm going to give you a second to take a look at this slide and think about the words that you see here. And feel free, if you want to, in the chat to even put any words that stand out to you. I'll give you a few seconds. So I'll throw out a couple things that, you know, as I look at the slide that really stand out, like diverse perspectives, inclusive, collective wisdom, ownership, sense of belonging. I think one of the things that we often forget is that when you build capacity and you give people agency, those things start to happen. And you start to really understand that there is a community of perspective, and these diverse perspectives give you a better understanding of the whole and how we support our students and our communities and our families. So when we nurture shared or collaborative leadership, we also nurture collective agency. Shared power through collaborative leadership supports a culture where we have belonging, where we have safety and care, and it allows us to develop the capacity for leadership that allows our interest holders, our educational partners, our students, our parents, families, and educators to then become true agents of change in the process. And that's really what we're trying to do, is help people be agents of change and do what we know is going to be best in supporting our students and our families and communities. Next slide. So collaborative leadership is vital to building an inclusive and empowering school wherein all your stakeholders or your interest holders feel that their expertise and commitment to the community is recognized and valued. And think about how important that is. Think about how it is just for you when you feel like what you share and what you bring to the table is recognized and valued. So collaborative leadership enables educators, it enables our students and families to work together to define and co-create learning environments that allow everyone to grow, to learn, and thrive. And that's really what this is all about. The hard work and efforts that support collaborative leadership and the policies and structures that serve as its foundations are vital to building an inclusive and empowering school where all of our interest holders feel that their expertise and community and commitment to the community are recognized and valued. Like I said, all of those things are so important because that brings us together in ways that we really start to do some dynamic and transformational work. Next slide. So one of the best ways to tap into our mindsets and begin to reflect what I like to call our mental models of how we see the world, it begins with questions. And the deeper and the more depth that we're willing to engage our questions around to ask and consider really makes us then become even more reflective. And so if you look here, here are some questions to consider regarding the idea of relationship building. And think about this: deep listening. I think that's one that we all can work on because it's really difficult. Very often we're listening just to speak, but how often do we really sit down and just deeply listen to what is being said? And then cultivating trust. And I believe also with trust, there needs to be safety. Safety and trust together are really important because they're a little bit different. And then the last one is self-reflection, always important. So consider how these questions, as you start to think about, the coming year and where you're going, how these questions can support your collaborative leadership and the mindsets in your system. I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Kim.
So now that we have our purpose and we have our mindset together, the biggest thing is, how do we do this work? Right? At the end of the day, we know we have to have a collaborative leadership structure, but how do I know if I'm creating an effective team? Because that at the end of the day, you need your team to be effective. So when we're talking about creating an effective collaborative leadership structure, you're talking about fostering an environment where these stakeholders can work together towards student success. Again, at the end of the day, it's about removing barriers for our students to be successful. So there are 6 key ways to do this. You can, number one, identify those key stakeholders, those ones that you know would make the team thrive. You're going to facilitate open dialogue. It's important for us to realize all those people, are we all on the same page? You're going to establish shared vision and goals. We need directions. As we're building this community school and we're transforming the environment, what is our vision? What are our goals? Determine collective expertise. What do we all bring to the table? What are our strengths? And how do we work in those strengths as a team to take the school to the next level? Defining roles and responsibilities. We know everyone's expertise, but what role now do I play in the team? And then next, regular communication channels. You have to consistently communicate and meet to work towards these goals so you can successfully transform your school into the community school hub that you need. Next slide, please. So let's talk about identifying key stakeholders. It's not enough to go out there and say, I want this person, that person, that person. Oh, I think they do good. No, we got to go a little deeper than that, right? So first we need to map out those stakeholder groups. Who are those influential people on campus that talk to everybody, that has that voice that everyone talks to? We want to tap those people, right? Because they already have that audience that's listening to them. So how can we use them to help us get our school building with this community school hub, right? Who has the ear? Who is impacting the operations and the outcome currently at the school? We want to tap those people. So you want to map out who those stakeholders are. Again, consider influence and impact. There are just some people that are natural leaders. They can sit down and they can lead people with no sweat or anything. People like talking to them. They're very charismatic. Why not use them on the team? At the end of the day, it's all about student success. So let's use those skills and put them to work, right? Assess needs and concerns, right? We have these needs at our school. Who are these individuals currently working that are doing well that we can align and match those needs with their strengths? We want them on the team. Identify key relationships, right? So, who are people on campus that have very good relationships and they can bring other people to the table and they listen well and they talk to people well and people just naturally gravitate them to because they have that relationship and engagement, right? Again, those people that are going to engage others, they constantly communicate, they have their ear. This is how you're going to identify those key stakeholders. Again, sometimes you want the people that are your champions, but it's okay to bring a couple of naysayers to the table, right? Because sometimes those people also have a following. But our goal is to let's get them in and let's see if we can kind of smooth them, like mold them a little bit, and let's see where they can take us with this community schools work. Next slide, please. Open dialogue. You must talk to your team members, right? You cannot have your team members in a room and you do not talk. So in order for that to happen, the space has to be safe. David mentioned that earlier. Safe, welcoming environment. All opinions matter. All opinions are valuable. Whatever you bring to the table, I'm willing to accept it because I'm welcoming you to this space. But again, we're going to set those ground rules. We're respecting your opinion, we're respecting your voice, but it needs to come from a place of respect. It needs to come from a place of when we speak is for us to have good dialogue so we can be productive, right? It also needs to come from a place of if I'm talking, I need you to listen. And when I'm listening to you, you can talk, right? Active listening, that give and take. There's some empathy, right? Because you always should be understanding of other people's perspectives and valuing diverse perspectives. Encourage participation. Cannot be the same people always talking at the meeting. We need to have everyone engaged, right? You have those that silently wait, and they usually have those 4 or 5 people that they always have something to say. Well, we need to get those that aren't talking engaged too. But again, that's making the environment comfortable for them and knowing that we want to hear their voice. Ask open-ended questions. Yes and no is surface level. Open-ended gets us in depth. It gets us into the weeds of the conversation, right? No surface level, in depth. And then again, we got to foster that culture of trust. Open, effective dialogue is not going to happen unless people in the room trust each other, which means the conversations stay in the room. If someone opens up about something, it stays in the room. That privacy, that confidentiality, and whatever is needed to be said that's going to work towards the progress of kids, we can do that. But if someone shares that private information because they had a moment, respect that and keep that confidential. Next slide, please. Establishing a shared vision and goals. All of the stakeholders in the room need to be involved in the visioning process. Everyone has an idea to contribute their ideas and their aspirations. Identify those core values. So, as a community school, as we're building it, what are those core values and beliefs that not only our schools should have, that we want our individuals who are representing parts of the school to have that are on our collaborative leadership structure? We need to make sure we have those collective goals, that they're measurable, and that they align with those values, beliefs, and mission that we're doing. And we also need to not also talk about it, but we need to be about it as well. So we got to make sure that we are developing those action plans. Next slide, please. Determine collective expertise. So in the chat, I have a question. When you were determining, when you identified your stakeholders, when you decided what your mission, goals, beliefs were, when you had that open conversation, what did you do to figure out what everybody brought to the table? If you can put it in the chat, what strategies did you use to determine who knew what? What expertise were they bringing to the table? If you can place that in the chat, just very curious, what did you do on your end? Yeah. And if anyone wants to open up the mic and have something to say, please do so. So Delia in the from Harupa said it was hands-on activities, self and partner identification. Huh, Delia, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but can you kind of tell us a little bit about that? That sounds interesting. If you're able to speak, if are you there? I'm not sure if she's there in a position to speak, but we loved what you said. Craig Baker had to get to know the team and their strengths. Craig, how did you do that? How did you get to know the team and their strengths? Relationships. Oh, okay. Oh, you're having trouble unmuting. Hold on, Dilly. Let me see if I can do that for you. Are you able to unmute now, Delia? Oh, there
Yes, can
we
you
go.
hear me?
Yes. So Craig said he built relationships to get to know the strengths of their team, but you said you did hands-on self-partner identification. How did that work?
Yeah, so we did this closer towards the start of second semester once we all were familiar with each other and had a couple of conversations and learning about just the concept of community schools. And then I kind of tapped into my teacher background. I had posters on the board with the different pillars, and I kind of just led the group into letting them know like how can they help with those particular pillars. So that was that self-identification part. And then the second round, we had sticky notes in which then they acknowledged somebody else in the room and their strengths. And then they tagged them into those particular pillars. And that was kind of like how I developed it, not only for them to acknowledge their own strength, but also so that the rest of the group could see what they were bringing to the table and who were the players that we had in the room.
You just did the whole slide for us. That was perfect. Thank you, Delia. No, seriously, everything that you just said, thank you. That is a really great activity. And I agree with Serena, very happy that you shared that because you just showed examples, a clear example of everything that's on the slide. They had a chance, exactly, great asset mapping activity. They had a chance to share their accomplishments and have it compiled. They were able to organize the information. You organized it in pillars. You had them go by and do some dotting and some gallery walks. And in a way, they kind of designed and shared a group resume in a way, right? You were able to go by each poster and see, oh my God, these are the people that are good with family and community engagement. They're great at integrated supports. That's amazing. And that is exactly how you're going to determine collective expertise. It may look different from one school to the next or to one collaborative leadership structure to the next. But the point is, we need that information. That information is vital because you don't want to give something to somebody and that's not an area of strength. They're like, oh, I don't do well in this area. You want an effective team. And one of the things is making sure you know the collective expertise of your team. And the other thing that Craig said, which is also very important, you build those relationships. When you have those relationships, people will talk to you. They want to work with you. They're going to give you all the information you need to know how they can best serve the team. So thank you, Craig, and thank you, Delia, for sharing what you have done for that. Next slide, please. So this is kind of an example of what Delia was sharing. They have what's called a group resume, and that's when everybody puts their expertise and what they have together, so you can get an idea of what everything has. Another way is we have from Gallup, you have your Strengths Finder, which you can use as a team to kind of get an idea of where everybody works best in. Are they that thinker? Are they an influencer? Are that relationship person? Or they just execute? So these are just two examples of things that you can actually do to determine collective expertise. And we have that information for you in our resource folder as well. So you do have access to this. Next slide, please. Defining roles and responsibilities. So now that you have your team, you know everybody's expertise, we've had discussions, you have the stakeholders, you know the vision. what are going to be the roles and responsibilities of that team? So, number one, clearly define what they are and what their responsibilities are. The last thing you want to do is offer a position to somebody and they don't know what that position does. From the facilitator to the note taker to the person who's responsible for organizing your resources. It needs to be clear, defined roles between that. Clarify what the expectations of those positions are. And on top of that, have some accountability measures behind it, because you may have a person that you thought was doing well in that position, but over time you realize, I think this person may be a little bit better, so I may want them to work together. I may want to try this with another person. You have to measure how those positions are doing, or if they're even worth having on your team. It's going to vary because each team may look a little bit different. And you want to make sure that you're promoting collaboration. Collaboration is everything. You have to foster that culture of support, communication, and mutual respect. Next slide, please. The last one, implement regular communication channels. So when you guys are not together, when you have to get information out, how are you going to do it to your stakeholders, your leadership structure? You're going to do that newsletter, that bulletin. All my teachers used to get tired of me. I used to over communicate. They would get a weekly bulletin, the monthly newsletter, the calendar, a phone call home. They like, stop communicating with me. But guess what? You always know what's going on. So communication is everything. Don't be afraid to put information on the school website, because again, as you're building your community school, transparency is everything. Even though your collaborative leadership structure is taking care of a lot of it, communicate with your stakeholders. Let them know what you're doing, what's going on. We have an assessment coming up. We have um, a focus group coming up. We have all these things that are coming up that we can use. And we have this event and we're going to be talking about this. It's okay to do that. Use your social media. I know people kind of don't want to be on social media. You should know how many parents are on social media between TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We get a lot of parents that way. They can forget about something. All of a sudden, you just pop up on social media. Your school pops up. You don't forget about your parent teacher associations, your PTOs, your school site councils, your ELACs, and then those community forums and town halls. The next slide. David, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, do we have any questions? We're hoping this kind of, as Dr. Kemp and I were discussing, we hope this kind of sets the stage for the coming year, gets you ready, gets you excited. We know you're in a very busy time right now as you're wrapping up the end of the year, but you're also thinking about the year to come. And so if you have any questions, you can type them in, or you can just unmute. If not, we'll go through the last little bit here. Go ahead and Stephanie and take us to the next slide. So do you want to?
Yeah, I can do it. So we knew we tried to keep the information not so heavy today because number one, it's the end of the year. You guys are tired. You have report cards, AP, final exams, end of the year reports. So we just want to keep it really simple today. But one of the things that we want to intentionally give you some time to do while you have this time block was to complete an annual needs and assets assessment for us. It is 8 questions. That is it. We were not going to give you anything with 15, 30 questions because you guys probably would be like, I'm not answering this. That's too much. So what we are going to do is basically there is a link, a Qualtrics link in the chat, or you can scan it. We would like to give you the grace of time right now to complete this assessment while you're on here with us. Purpose of this assessment is basically, this was our first year as a Southern Inland RTAC, and we gave you the information based upon the needs that the state told us and the needs that were coming up as we were speaking to you guys constantly. But as we go into next year, we want to get a little bit deeper because each year the work should get deeper. We want to make sure that we're giving you the tools and strategies, resources, whatever you need to make sure that your school and district is successful with transforming your school and district into community schools. So if you can take the time to give this assessment, we're going to give you some time to do that. It should take about 10 minutes. So if you want to take yourself off camera while doing it, you can do so. But we're just going to all sit here together and work on this assessment. You get the time so we can get the results and be ready for you guys next year. So that would be greatly appreciated. Stephanie, if you can put it back a slide to what it was on. Yes. So we're going to give you guys some time for this. I don't have any background music for you because we're in the UCLA library, so we don't have any background music. Maybe we can get some real quick, but we'll give you the time to fill out the survey. Thank you so much. The question says webinar, is it for this one? Oh, for the year. So continue the webinars for the year. Are you talking about the needs and assets assessment, Cami?
I am. It says this webinar, but there's been multiple. I just wanted to make sure we were answering correctly.
Yes, you are. It must have been a typo. I apologize.
Need a little bit more time? And hopefully my playlist didn't put you to sleep. Are we feeling good, everyone? I'm seeing a couple goods. Just remember, after we only have a couple more slides, you can continue and finish off, but it looks like everyone's good. So Stephanie, go ahead and take us to the next slide. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Here's a chance for some feedback. We have feedback survey. Give you a second if you want to capture that. Stephanie also just placed it in the chat. All right, go ahead and take us to the next slide. You can see the timeline here for the annual progress report. We have that there. Remember, you have access to all the slides. Stephanie, go ahead and go to the next slide. And you can see office hours. We're not doing office hours today, but you can see that STAC is doing office hours on the APR, and you see the dates around that. We also have our office hours. Next slide. Remember, our next peer learning webinar is next Wednesday. And now I believe Dr. Kemp is our last webinar for this school year.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Next slide. If you need to contact us, here's our information. We're hoping that we'll see some of you at the Empower conference coming up here in June, which is our California statewide STAC RAN conference for community schools. We have a lot of our team presenting. I know Dr. Kemp has 2 sessions, correct?
Yes.
Yes, I have 2 sessions. Siobhan and Yvonne each have a session. So we'll be there if you are at the Empower conference coming up. So we're looking forward to seeing you if you get a chance. Any final words, Dr. Kemp?
I just appreciate you guys hanging in there through the year. This was our first year as a RTAC. We have asked you guys to come to meetings every month, whether it's the community of practice or the peer learning, and just want to say we appreciate you all. I understand schedules. Before here, I was a principal for years. David has been a principal for years. And so we understand how it feels when you're trying to juggle schedules at the school site and just trying to make it work with getting on these webinars. So greatly, greatly appreciate it. Truly hope that you guys get some rest and have a great summer. Again, our peer learning will be our last one of the year, which is next week. And we truly, truly hope you guys just get some rest and get that self-care in so we can continue to do amazing work for our students and families.
And I'll add, I really appreciate the heart that you have for this work and the transformation that you're looking to push forward, because we live in a time that is very different. And this work is very important because our students are growing up and moving out into a world that probably looks a lot different than the world maybe we walked out into as we were growing up. So the more that we can do to support our students and ground them and support them in their future and their dreams and what they want to do is hard work. It's important work, and we appreciate all that you do. So we thank you. And if you need to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at any time. You guys have a wonderful afternoon. And if anyone wants to unmute and say anything on the way out, feel free.
I just wanted to see if anybody's excited.
Thank you, Eliana.
Yeah,
Thank you to all of you. Thank you for your comments and filling out of our surveys. We appreciate all that you share with us.
I think Eliana was saying something.